Okay, so we're talking about vaccines still, as well as the immune system. Let's continue. So I found this little cartoon that I thought was kind of helpful and maybe amusing. It says here, macrophages clean up viruses and call in T cells. You can see there's the person with the dustpan. Neutrophils kill viruses and call more neutrophils. B cells clean up viruses and alert other B cells. Remember, they help to clean up those viruses utilizing antibodies. And they're going to be calling more cells in using a chemical called cytokines. We didn't talk about that, I don't think, but neither here nor there. Killer T cells destroy infected cells with cytotoxin. We're going to talk about T cells briefly in just a moment here. Helper T cells call for backup. They bring in more B cells and more T cells, and epithelial cells are most of the cells of your body. So let's do a quick review. Dendritic cells are going to go and they're going to take a piece of the invader virus or bacteria's armor. We call that an antigen, and it's going to take it back to the lymphatic tissue where more B cells are going to proliferate. And again, those B cells are going to make antibodies. What do antibodies do? They stick to the virus, inactivating it, and also mark it to the cell, or mark it so that the cell knows, hey, this is something that we have to get rid of. It's covered in all these antibodies. So T cells, we've talked quite a bit about B cells, but what do T cells actually do? T cells also interact with those dendritic cells so that they know what they're fighting against. And there are two main varieties of T cells. There are helper T cells and there are killer T cells. I'm sure you could probably figure out what killer T cells do, but helper T cells stimulate more B cells to make more antibodies, and they also help to develop more killer T cells. All right. Killer T cells directly kill cells that have already been infected by a foreign invader. So if you have a cell that has a virus on it, that cell is just getting ready to explode and release more virus and more viral particles into your body. So killer T cells are going to get rid of those guys. All right. T cells also use these cellular messengers called cytokines that basically let your body know, let the other cells know, hey, we got to get ready. There's something here. There's something not quite right. There's a foreign body inside of us. So I've heard it said, okay, fine. Vaccines help prepare your body and get you ready so that you won't get infected. And then there's this logic of, well, if everybody else gets one, how come I still need to? Aren't we safe? Isn't the virus going to go away if everyone's been vaccinated? But the problem with that is not everyone can get vaccinated. There are people with that are immunocompromised, people who have cancer treatments, or sometimes the elderly are very young. And so if they can't be vaccinated, they can still get the virus. They can still get the disease. So herd immunity helps protect those folks. There's kind of more to it than that also. So on the left here, there's no herd immunity and all of these people are getting infected. Well, if you have all these extra people infected, what you're going to wind up having happen is the process of evolution is going to take place, which we're going to talk about later on in this semester. But the process of evolution is going to make it so that these folks who have received, these blue folks, or actually these green folks rather, what I'm driving at here is that evolution is going to make it so that even if you have a vaccine, you can still potentially be infected by the virus because the virus is becoming different. So if the virus evolves, your vaccine will no longer work. That's one of the reasons why we have to get a flu shot every single year, and it just doesn't work for every single flu every single time. These things are evolving very, very quickly. And it's allowing them to spread. And if you allow more people to be infected with it, it's going to allow that evolution to take place even faster. So even if everybody else is getting one, you still need to get one. We are attempting to achieve herd immunity. So we're going to talk about modern vaccines which use attenuated viruses or they use viral particles. Now, what does attenuated mean? Attenuated means that the virus has been weakened significantly. Okay, so here, this can be done through the process of serial passage, which hopefully you remember from last time is what Louis Pasteur did with rabies in order to save that boy's life and develop a vaccine for rabies. You pass it through many generations of a different animal, and the virus evolves so that it is only really infectious toward that animal. So that is one way in which you can make a virus still elicit an immune response, but not be deadly to the person that it is infecting. The serial passage, passing it through many generations of animals and allowing the virus to evolve to those animals. The other thing that can be done, and you don't need to worry about the details of this image, it's just from a recent paper about the development of an influenza vaccine. But you can use a process called reverse genetics, where you are taking and making it so that the virus cannot replicate, or you're editing the virus so that its genome is not as infectious, it's not as viral. Although I think a lot of times they make it so that the virus can't proliferate. So the virus will latch onto one of your cells, it will inject its genetic material into those cells, and then your cells will develop the ability to fight against them, but the virus won't be able to replicate. So your body will be ready for it next time you encounter this virus, but the virus that they're actually injecting in your arm isn't going to be able to spread. Okay, so that's what's meant by attenuated viruses. They can also just inject viral particles into you, which is kind of similar to what's happening with the RNA. It's different in many ways, and we'll talk about why. But they can just basically grind up a bunch of viruses, inject the viral particles into you, and so your body says, okay, hey, this is what's coming. I know what I need to do now to fight against them. So we have this new way that has been recently developed, although a lot of the technology utilized in it is not new. The usage of nanoparticles is not new. The usage of RNA is certainly not new. But we have these mRNA vaccines, which are prevalent right now in the United States. We have the Pfizer vaccine and we have the Moderna vaccine. And what these are doing is they are taking the genetic sequence of the virus, or at least certain portions of it, and they're having your cells make those viral particles. They're having your cells make those viral antigens. So remember, make this thing go. Remember, DNA is the recipe for protein, and DNA lives inside your cells, inside the nucleus of your cells. But there's another piece to this component, and that is that DNA inside of the nucleus is transcribed into mRNA. Okay, that mRNA is then taken and to a ribosome, and then that ribosome is going to make protein from it. Move my face out of the way. Okay, so the formula is, and actually this is something called the central dogma of biology. You don't need to know that term, but it's a good term to know. DNA is made into RNA, and then that RNA is made into protein. So if we can take those viral particles and make our own mRNA, that is the code for these viral proteins, we can actually have your cells make virus stuff without actually having a virus in your body, or without actually having you get sick. So that's how these mRNA vaccines are working. And these things are super promising too, just because you can basically make the cell make whatever viral particle you want. And so potentially we could develop immunity to all kinds of things. So how do these things get approved so quickly? I know a lot of you probably are a little bit skeptical of this process because normally vaccines take years to develop. And the answer to that question is, billions of dollars is certainly going to motivate an industry, especially the pharmaceutical industry. So, before they're working through and trying to figure out solutions to some of these different health problems, and they're putting up, a lot of their own capital to do this. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard things like in medicine, there are like 3 trial phases and all that. Well, if you have billions of dollars thrown at you, you can run all the phases at the same time and see what sticks. So the short answer is money is what made these things get approved so quickly. The more nuanced answer is that a lot of these therapeutics and a lot of this technology has been in the pipeline for a long time and was almost ready to use. And, again, getting a whole bunch of money is certainly a strong motivator. So, again, why are these mRNA vaccines such a big deal? It's for the central dogma reason that I talked about earlier. It's because we can make cells make whatever viral proteins we want them to and potentially make us immune to all sorts of things without having to go through the process of reverse genetics, without having to go through the serial passages where we're giving it to different animals until it no longer is infectious to humans. This is a big deal because it allows us to really be able to dial the vaccine in and do whatever we want in terms of immunity, almost. So some things to know from this last lecture. You should know the role of B cells, the production of antibodies, as well as B cells also help your body form a memory so that they can remember the kinds of things that you've been infected with. The roles of T cells, which are killing cells that are actually infected, if it's a killer T, or if it's a helper T, they are recruiting more B cells and more T cells to the area and releasing that chemical cytokines so that other immune particles can come in and help fight the infection. Herd immunity and why it is important. Immunocompromised people. I have many immunocompromised people in my life that I love. I don't want them to die. So please help out with herd immunity. As well as the other reason herd immunity is important is because the virus will evolve more if we give it more people to thrive in. How are viruses attenuated? Serial passage, reverse genetics. How does evolution impact viruses and vaccines? Again, the flu virus is everywhere and you have to get vaccinated for it every year because the flu evolves very quickly. Luckily for us, SARS-CoV-2 evolves much more slowly than the flu, but it still can evolve. In the next lecture, we're going to be talking about, can an mRNA vaccine change your DNA? The short answer is no. Will it hurt you? The short answer is no. Is it worth it? The short answer is yes. We are also probably either in the next lecture or in the lecture after that, we're going to be discussing certain misgivings that communities of color might have with getting vaccines and why those are legitimate and why I still think everyone should get vaccinated.